Imperialism was not a new concept to Europeans. However, it is recognised that by the 1870s, a new age of imperialism dawned, which was radically different to its predecessor. The general historical consensus was that this age lasted from the late 19th century until the First World War. The characteristics of new imperialism consisted of rapid imperial expansion into Africa and Asia by the old colonial powers, France, Britain, Spain and Portugal, as well as the new colonial powers, which were Belgium, the USA, Japan and the newly united Germany and Italy. Historian Christopher Bailey believes that this new wave of imperialism was the first age of global imperialism, dominated by Britain and characterised by unprecedented global power shifts and developments in the international economy. This new age differed from its predecessor, not only in speed and efficiency, but also in its aims, focusing more on dominating natives and resources. These aims differed from the old imperialism, which was focused on trade and replacing the natives with civilized white people, also known as settlement colonialism. Another trait of this era was the vast amount of territory that was annexed in such a short time. This was reinforced by popular, patriotic and nationalist support for empire in the metropole. A multitude of factors led to this new wave of imperialism, such as the technological superiority of European powers over the colonised. This can be seen in the Maji Rebellion in German East Africa between 1905 and 1907, which saw the Maji population slaughtered by the superior German machine guns whilst they defended themselves with their beliefs and spears. This leads into another factor when it came to new imperialism, which was competition for resources vital to the modern economy, such as oil, rubber, coal, and cash crops such as corn, which was a vital reason for the German colonisation of Africa. The imperial historian Eric Hobsbawm believes that this new modern economy fueled imperial expansion in this era, with the demand for new resources outstripping supply, which ultimately led to these resources being forcefully taken. An example of this being the French expedition to acquire rubber forcefully from Vietnam in 1887 and all of Vietnam by 1907. The Berlin Conference took place between November of 1884 till February of 1885. The aim of this conference was to regulate European trade and colonisation of Africa during the early part of new imperialism. During the conference, all main European powers joined together in what was dubbed the Scramble for Africa, in which the powers divided Africa up with the use of straight lines, which is believed to have just followed rivers or other main points, not taking into account who was living in the area and what their cultural beliefs were. Historian Eric Alana Pisano hints that this could have been a strategic move when it came to monitoring cross-border movement. This wrongdoing led to clashes in the new divide. It should be known, however, that some historians do not like to place much emphasis on the role of the Scramble in causing the partitioning that took place at the conference. Although France had conquered Vietnam by 1907, they never really had full control of the Vietnamese. This is evident by the rebellion from 1885 to 1895. The Vietnamese were not the only colonised people to resist against the rule of colonial powers, whether this was through everyday resistance or outright rebellion. Historian Barbara Bush declares that empires have had negative consequences for the majority of colonised subjects and mainly benefited a minority in the imperial centre and colonial periphery. This is what Bush believes ultimately led to the dynamic cultural change and resistance that challenged the inequalities inherent in imperialist relations. Colonised people were treated like creatures, being restricted in their own native lands by having the colonisers' beliefs and ways forced upon them. Most British missionaries that went over to Africa with the intent of a civilising mission involving the three C's: Christianity, civilisation and commerce. However, in truth, they wanted trade, resources, and most importantly, wealth.
British in Kenya, an example of unfair treaty and a lust for wealth. In 1888, Britain fought with Germany over Kenya, with Britain winning. their intentions were to improve it in the next few years. For a while this was true, as they had introduced the Kenya to Uganda railway. However, all is not perfect, with white settlers buying up all cheap farmland, importing forced labour from India due to the resistance of Kenyan people, then proceeding to introduce a new law in which only white people could grow coffee in order to eradicate competition from other small African farms.
The age of new imperialism contained the seeds that had ultimately led to its own destruction. Historian Barbara Bush considers the end of the new imperial age, in conventional historiography, to be the catastrophes of the First World War that precipitated the forcible decolonisation of the German, Austro-Hungarian and Ottoman empires and the decline of Britain and France. However, she recognises that this is not the only factor, with important elements such as the rise of fascism, the global depression of the 1930s and the Second World War, which all catalysed the decline of European empires, with what could be classed as the two most powerful empires, France and Britain, cling on to their legacies until a combination of factors, including the rise of the USA to a world power, precipitated hasty decolonisation in the 1960s.
Another historian that has shared similar views about the First World War was Eric Hobsbawm, who adds that he believes the clashes and rivalries fostered by imperialism led to World War I. This also weaves back into the first point that new imperialism was its own destruction. However, with all this being said, imperialism never really ceased to exist. Historian Peter Alcock points out that old empires never entirely die, but have an afterlife throughout. This intertwines into the consequences that occurred, as it is widely acknowledged that even to this day, the effects of empire can still be seen. The effects that this new and modern stage of imperialism have left behind never really disappeared. The new technological and scientific advancements that had come out of the previous period could be viewed as positive. This includes new railways, modern ways of generating power, cars, new weaponry and more effective medicines. Historian Eric Hobsbawm and Ray Keeley agree that the new imperialism fueled the introduction of global economy. However, not everything that followed this period was positive or beneficial to the majority of people. Racial tensions that were built up in this new age unfortunately also linger on, even well after the event. Ray Keeley goes on to note that the racial ideas of the period had devastating consequences, especially in 20th century Europe, with the rise of fascism and ultranationalism.
Historians examine, there would appear to be two main approaches to new imperialism. The first, by Hobsbawm and Keeley, was that it was a mutually dependent relationship between itself and capitalism. And were capitalism not dependent on new markets, then imperialism would not have happened as rapidly. The second theory, by Porter and Bush, is that imperialism was caused by European rivalries fueled by popular and patriotic support by the majority back in the metropole.